pen stroke on paper shouldn't have been louder than the jazz filtering through Il Gabbiano. Yet Kira felt every scratch like thunder as she circled 3 vital warnings on the Mafia Boss's bill. Her hands trembled imperceptibly, years of waiting tables masking the terror crawling beneath her skin. The man they called the gentleman sat in his usual corner booth, back to the wall, eyes on the door, a creature of precise habit who never spoke more than necessary. His presence reorganized the very molecules of the restaurant, making even the silverware sound different when he dined. The waitstaff had developed an unspoken choreography around his visits. Freshly polished glasses, premium spirits kept in reserve, menus presented without fingerprints. Even the chef prepared his rare steak with ceremonial focus, knowing the gentleman could sense imperfection without tasting it. Other diners unconsciously lowered their voices when he entered, an instinctive deference to power they couldn't name, but inherently recognized. Children stilled their restlessness, sensing something predatory beneath the civilized veneer of tailored suits and perfectly knotted ties. Kira had earned the right to serve his table through sheer observational precision, remembering his preferences for bottled water at precisely 58 degrees, bread served without olive oil, wine poured exactly 2 fingers from the rim. No request ever needed repetition, no dissatisfaction ever expressed. His hands fascinated her most, manicured, steady, capable of signing million-dollar contracts or delivering silent death with equal efficiency. She'd seen those hands leave tips arranged in perfect geometric precision, bills aligned as if measured with instruments rather than placed by human touch. Kira tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, surveying the restaurant's warm amber lighting that cast long shadows across polished wood and white tablecloths. The humidity of Savannah seeped through the windows, despite the aggressive air conditioning, making the space feel both luxurious and suffocating. The river glinted like oil beyond the wrought iron balconies, its dark surface occasionally catching the reflection of passing boats and distant lights. Thursday nights at Il Gabbiano meant the gentleman's quiet dinner, always followed by espresso, always ending with a generous tip and a curt nod. Tonight broke pattern when the stranger entered, a man whose normalcy seemed forced, whose attention to being unnoticed was itself the brightest flag. Kira registered the weight in his jacket pocket as she delivered breadsticks to table 7, her peripheral vision cataloging his too-still posture. The stranger's reflection caught in the bar mirror as he ordered Scotch neat, his gaze never directly touching the gentleman, but always orbiting him like a predatory satellite. Most staff wouldn't notice. Kira did because noticing was how she'd survived 3 years of night classes and double shifts. His right hand never left his pocket, the kind of stillness that screamed movement was coming. The condensation on his barely touched scotch formed a puddle beneath the glass, untouched and forgotten as his focus sharpened with each passing minute. Sweat gathered at Kira's nape, despite the arctic chill of the restaurant's air, her breathing carefully regulated as she approached the gentleman with his bill. For the first time in 2 years of serving him, she allowed their fingers to brush as she passed him the leather folder. 3 circles in blue ink, marked words from the evening specials, printed at the bottom of the receipt. Hitman behind you. Deal gone wrong. Exit now. The message stared up from the paper, her warning to a man who made other people disappear, not the other way around. The gentleman's eyes, cold gray like the river in winter, flicked from the paper to Kira's face, no emotion registering beyond a slight tightening at the corners. He placed his glass deliberately over the circles, tapping once with his index finger as if confirming receipt. Kira returned to polishing glasses behind the bar, her movement a choreographed ballet of normalcy while her heartbeat thundered in her ears. The stranger shifted forward on his bar stool, hand emerging from his pocket with painful slowness that telegraphed intention. Time stretched like pulled taffy as the gentleman stood, not hurriedly, smoothing his tailored suit jacket with practiced precision. Without a backward glance, he moved toward the kitchen's side exit, posture relaxed despite the warning, as if merely stepping out for air. The silence that followed his departure lasted exactly 4 seconds before the stranger knocked over his bar stool in pursuit, the crash of wood against tile shattering the carefully maintained atmosphere. 2 men in dark suits materialized from corner tables, their movements suddenly focused. Glass shattered somewhere near the kitchen, followed by a sound like a champagne cork, muffled yet distinct, then a heavy thud that Kira felt through the soles of her shoes. The jazz continued playing as if nothing had happened, a trumpet solo wailing obliviously over whatever violence had just transpired. Her manager appeared, face carefully blank as he announced the restaurant would close early due to a kitchen incident, his eyes warning staff not to ask questions. Kira collected her tips with trembling fingers, wondering if she'd just signed her own death warrant by interfering. The walk home stretched longer than usual, each street lamp a spotlight exposing her to unknown watchers. Savannah's ancient oak trees dripped Spanish moss that swayed in the heavy night air like hanged men, their shadows reaching for Kira with every step. Her apartment stood dark and silent, the lock clicking too loudly in the empty hallway. That night, she slept with her back against the wall, a kitchen knife under her pillow, eyes burning from refusing to close them, until exhaustion finally claimed her near dawn. Morning brought no police inquiries, no newspaper headlines, no evidence that anything unusual had occurred at Il Gabbiano. The restaurant remained closed for renovations, a hastily printed sign taped to the door when Kira passed by on her way to class. Professor Harlow's lecture on criminal psychology seemed cruelly ironic as Kira struggled to focus, her notes devolving into meaningless scribbles while her mind replayed the stranger's predatory stillness. The classroom felt exposed. Too many windows, too many doors, too many unknown faces. 2 days passed in a fog of hypervigilance, Kira jumping at shadows and sleeping in short, fitful bursts. Her roommate questioned the dark circles under her eyes, but she deflected with excuses about final exams and term papers coming due. The call came Saturday morning. Il Gabbiano would reopen that evening. All staff expected to report as usual. Kira's fingers went numb around her phone as the manager's voice continued with businesslike detachment, mentioning nothing about Thursday's incident. Returning felt like walking into a lion's den. The restaurant's familiar warmth now sinister despite fresh flowers on every table and a new bartender polishing glasses where the stranger had sat. Kira tied her apron with trembling fingers, wondering if she'd been forgotten or merely postponed. The envelope appeared in her locker during her break, cream-colored paper with her name written in elegant script. No return address, no explanation. Inside lay a small black box and a note that read only, "You saw what others missed. For protection when needed." The box contained a silver keychain, heavy and cool against her palm, engraved with a single letter, G. Its weight suggested purpose beyond decoration, its presence a message she couldn't fully decipher but instinctively understood. Acknowledgement and debt combined. Another server whispered that the gentleman's table had been reserved again, her eyes wide with the unspoken question of what happened 2 nights ago. Kira arranged water glasses with mechanical precision, her reflection fragmented across their surfaces like her scattered thoughts. When he entered, alive, unharmed, immaculate as always, the restaurant's ambient noise dipped momentarily before resuming at a higher pitch. He took his usual table without fanfare, expression betraying nothing as Kira approached with menus and the night's specials. Recognition flashed between them like silent lightning, a current of understanding that needed no words. Kira poured his water without meeting his eyes, yet feeling his gaze trace the outline of her face with an intensity that stole her breath. The restaurant's other patrons remained oblivious to the invisible thread connecting Waitress and Mafia Boss, their casual dinner conversations creating a symphony of normalcy that disguised the dangerous undercurrent. Kira moved between tables with practiced ease, her body operating on muscle memory while her mind calculated survival odds. Gregory's bodyguards had doubled in number since the incident, strategically positioned throughout the dining room in patterns only a trained eye would recognize. They communicated through micro-expressions and subtle hand gestures, a silent language of protection and vigilance that fascinated Kira's academic mind. The restaurant itself had transformed in Kira's perception. Once simply a workplace, now a chessboard where powerful pieces moved according to rules she was just beginning to understand. Every entrance represented vulnerability, every mirror a tactical advantage, every kitchen knife a potential weapon. Her textbooks on criminal organizational structures suddenly came alive in 3 dimensions, theories manifesting in flesh and blood before her eyes. The hierarchical positioning of Gregory's men, the deference shown by other suspected associates, the carefully maintained buffer zone around his table, academia made real in terrifying clarity. His voice, when he finally spoke, surprised her with its warmth, low and cultured, nothing like the cold businessman she had imagined. "The veal scallopini tonight. Would you recommend it?" he asked, a question that seemed to carry weight beyond mere dinner options. "It depends on whether you trust the chef," Kira replied, the double meaning clear only to them, a code emerging between predator and unexpected savior. "Some find it too rich. Others appreciate the complexity. His smile, barely there, gone in an instant, transformed his face from marble to something almost human. "I'll trust your judgment then," he said, handing back the menu with deliberate care, his fingers brushing hers for the second time in 3 years. The dinner service proceeded with superficial normalcy, yet Kira felt the shift in atmosphere like a change in barometric pressure. Every time she approached his table, conversation nearby faltered, creating pockets of silence that followed her movements. His bodyguards, for now she recognized them as such, occupied strategic positions throughout the restaurant, their relaxed postures belying vigilant eyes that tracked every new arrival. One nodded almost imperceptibly to Kira when she passed, an acknowledgement that set her heart racing. "You never asked my name," the gentleman said, when she brought his espresso, the statement hanging between them like a bridge partially constructed. "After 2 years of service, after Thursday night, you deserve to know who you saved." Kira placed the demitasse precisely on the saucer, buying seconds to compose herself. "Knowing your name makes me a liability, not a savior," she answered, surprising herself with her boldness, with the calm in her voice despite her racing pulse. "Gregory Weiss," he offered anyway, breaking his own rule of anonymity, the name a gift and a burden simultaneously. "And I don't consider you a liability, Kira Johnson. I consider you an investment worth protecting." The sound of her full name on his lips sent ice through her veins. He'd investigated her, knew her, had probably seen the cramped apartment where she slept with a knife under her pillow. "I didn't help you for protection or investment," she whispered, hands clenched at her sides. "Why then?" Gregory asked, genuine curiosity softening his features as he studied her with the focus of someone unaccustomed to being surprised. Most would have looked away, pretended not to notice the danger. Self-preservation is human nature. Twilight gathered beyond the restaurant windows, the river darkening to match the night sky, street lamps casting golden reflections across the water's surface. "Because looking away when someone needs help isn't who I am," Kira answered simply, the truth requiring no elaboration. Gregory's expression changed subtly, something like respect replacing his usual calculated assessment. "The hitman was sent by the Cardoso family. A business disagreement escalated beyond reason," he explained, offering information as currency, as equalization. The name Cardoso registered immediately in Kira's memory, a family mentioned in her professor's lecture on emerging criminal enterprises, notable for their brutal efficiency and expansion into traditional territories. Their reputation for leaving no witnesses made Gregory's continued existence all the more remarkable. Beyond the restaurant windows, a police cruiser rolled slowly past, its presence a reminder of the thin veneer separating legitimate Savannah from its criminal underbelly. Gregory tracked its movement without turning his head, only the slight tension in his shoulders betraying his awareness. The Cardoso vendetta explained the unfamiliar cars Kira had noticed parked near her apartment building, the sensation of being watched during her morning runs along the riverfront. She wasn't just adjacent to Gregory's world anymore. She had become a marked coordinate on its map. Her professor had lectured about witness protection programs, about how completely one's identity must be erased to escape determined hunters. No such protection existed for those who aided crime lords against their enemies. Kira existed in a dangerous gray space between worlds, protected by obligation rather than law. "Is it over now?" Kira asked, thinking of her routine walks home along deserted streets, of unlocking her door alone in the dark. Or will there be others looking to finish what he started? The silence that followed felt weighted, Gregory's gaze dropping to the espresso as he considered his words carefully. "The immediate threat is eliminated, but in my world, safety is never permanent," he finally answered, honesty replacing what could have been false reassurance. Kira nodded, understanding more than she wanted to about the precarious nature of power and the enemies it created. "Then I guess we both need to stay observant," she said, the plural unintentional but hanging between them like a contract. "I meant what I wrote," Gregory said as he prepared to leave, placing cash beneath his saucer, enough to cover the meal several times over. The keychain isn't just a token of gratitude. Its meaning will become clear if needed. Kira touched her pocket where the silver weight rested, wondering what protection a keychain could possibly offer against the dangers surrounding a man like Gregory Weiss. "And what if I don't want to be part of your world?" she asked, voicing the fear that had haunted her since Thursday. "Too late," Gregory replied, standing with fluid grace that belied the power coiled beneath his custom suit. "You entered my world the moment you circled those words on my bill. Now we both have to live with the consequences." The next morning, police tape cordoned off a section of the alley behind Il Gabbiano, blue and white stripes fluttering in the humid breeze. 2 officers interviewed kitchen staff while deliberately avoiding Kira, their questions vague about disturbances rather than gunshots. News spread through the restaurant like smoke. The hitman's body had been discovered 3 blocks away in a dumpster, a single bullet hole beneath his chin. The coroner estimated time of death coincided perfectly with Kira's walk home, absolving her of any direct involvement. Gregory didn't return for a week, his absence conspicuous at the Thursday corner table that remained empty, despite other patrons requesting it. The manager refused all such requests with practiced politeness, the reservation book marking it as permanently reserved. Kira's criminal psychology professor discussed organized crime that week, his animated lecture on omerta, the code of silence, taking on new meaning as she sat rigid in her seat. Those who break silence rarely survive to regret it, he emphasized, unaware of her personal experience with the concept. Her roommate commented on the silver keychain that never left Kira's possession, curious about the lone initial that matched no one in her life. Just a gift from a customer, Kira explained, the partial truth easier than explaining how she'd become entangled with a mafia boss. Sleep came easier now. The knife returned to the kitchen drawer, as Kira discovered a strange sense of security in Gregory's absent protection. Her apartment building had a new maintenance man, who seemed unusually vigilant about checking exterior doors and security cameras. Whispers about the kitchen incident gradually faded as Il Gabbiano's patrons returned to their normal routines, the temporary closure dismissed as renovation rather than crime scene cleanup. Only Kira noticed that the new flooring behind the bar replaced precisely where the hitman had stood. The university semester advanced toward finals week. Kira's attention split between examinations and hyper-awareness of her surroundings. She'd catch herself studying reflections in windows, cataloging strangers' hand positions, noting exits, Gregory's world infiltrating her student life. One evening, walking home from late-night study, she spotted a sedan following at a discreet distance, its headlights dimmed, pace matching hers. Rather than fear, Kira felt a bizarre comfort, recognizing the same car that often appeared when she worked closing shifts. The Savannah heat intensified as May approached, making the restaurant's air conditioning a sanctuary for customers seeking respite. Kira's dark hair clung to her neck as she served overpriced cocktails to tourists, who knew nothing about the violence that had transpired beneath their feet. A local newspaper ran a small article about underworld tensions in the historic district, mentioning anonymous sources claiming territorial disputes between rival organizations. The article appeared and disappeared from the paper's website within hours, as if someone had paid to suppress it. Professor Harlow assigned a final paper on psychological triggers that break loyalty structures in criminal organizations, the irony not lost on Kira, as she typed furiously about the theoretical foundations of betrayal. Her practical experience remained locked behind her teeth, unshared. The silver keychain grew warm in her pocket from constant handling, her fingers seeking its reassurance during anxious moments. She discovered a hidden seam one night while studying, the letter G, sliding sideways to reveal a phone number etched into the metal beneath. The craftsmanship of the keychain spoke volumes about Gregory's attention to detail. Precision engineering disguised as ornament, utility masked as luxury, protection hidden within plain sight. The number contained no area code, suggesting a secure satellite connection rather than standard cellular service. Kira memorized the digits immediately, then researched secure deletion methods to remove any digital evidence of the number from her devices. She cleared browsing history, reset her phone to factory settings, paid cash for a burner phone, adapting to her new reality with academic thoroughness. Her academic advisor noticed the shift in her research focus, from broad criminal justice to specific studies on organized crime structures and witness security protocols. Preparing for FBI applications? He asked encouragingly, unaware she was mapping her own survival rather than planning a career. Campus security cameras registered in Kira's awareness now, their blind spots, rotation patterns, digital versus analog systems. She began logging routine police patrols, identifying unmarked law enforcement vehicles, cataloging the habits of campus security guards. Information previously invisible, now vital to daily navigation. Detective Walsh appeared at her apartment door unannounced, his badge flashing in the hallway light as he asked seemingly casual questions about her work schedule. Just following up on reports of suspicious activity near Il Gabbiano, he explained, eyes searching her face for signs of knowledge. I'm just a waitress working through college, Kira said, with practiced innocence, the lie forming easily on her tongue as she clutched the keychain in her pocket. Nothing suspicious happens in fine dining, except maybe charging $30 for pasta. Gregory returned on the first Thursday of May, the restaurant's atmosphere shifting the moment he crossed the threshold. He brought summer thunderstorms with him, lightning illuminating the river in strobing flashes as he settled into his corner booth, eyes finding Kira immediately. "Your finals must be approaching," he observed when she brought his usual whiskey. "Neat. Criminal psychology, wasn't it?" The casual reference to her academic life sent prickles down her spine, his knowledge of her extending beyond what she'd ever shared. A small leather portfolio appeared beside his plate midway through the meal, pushed toward Kira without comment or explanation. "Your tuition for next semester," he said, when she hesitated to touch it, "considering you might need to reduce your hours here." "I don't want your money," Kira whispered fiercely, hands clenched around her serving tray, the weight of obligation heavier than any financial burden. "I didn't help you to become indebted to whatever this is." Gregory's expression remained impassive, though something like amusement flickered in his eyes. "It's not charity, it's investment. In talent, in potential, in someone who sees what others miss," he explained, his voice low enough that only she could hear. The portfolio remained untouched as Kira served his espresso, the tension between them thick enough to cut. "Education should never be compromised," Gregory continued, "especially for someone smart enough to save a life with 3 circled words." Lightning cracked again outside, closer this time, thunder following almost immediately as rain began lashing against the windows. "The scholarship committee will contact you next week," he added. "Completely legitimate. No connections to me that anyone could trace." Kira's criminal justice courses had taught her about money laundering, about shell corporations and front organizations that sanitized blood money. "How many strings come attached to this generosity?" she asked, the question sharper than intended. "None that weren't already attached the moment you involved yourself in my business," Gregory replied calmly, stirring a single sugar cube into his espresso. "Consider it mutually beneficial. Your education advances, and I gain an asset with remarkable observational skills." The word asset hung between them, its meaning clear. He wasn't offering charity but recruitment, a path into his world dressed as opportunity. "I'm studying to put people like you in prison," Kira reminded him, the irony not lost on either of them. Rain continued battering the restaurant windows, the storm matching Kira's internal turmoil as she considered his offer. Financial freedom beckoned seductively. No more double shifts, no more exhaustion undermining her studies, no more choosing between textbooks and groceries. "The choice is yours," Gregory said finally, placing his napkin beside his empty cup. "But talent wasted is tragedy in any context, and your talents are being wasted carrying plates and memorizing wine pairings." His bodyguards materialized as he prepared to leave, one opening an umbrella, while another scanned the rain-soaked street through the window. "I discovered the hitman wasn't working alone," Gregory mentioned casually, though his eyes conveyed the gravity behind the statement. Kira's blood froze despite the restaurant's warmth, understanding immediately that danger hadn't passed but merely paused. "The Cardoso family doesn't forgive easily," Gregory continued, buttoning his suit jacket. "Neither do I, which is why their accountant vanished last week." The portfolio remained on the table as Gregory departed, the leather corner darkening from raindrops blown through the momentarily open door. Kira slipped it into her apron pocket during cleanup, the weight of decision heavier than its physical presence against her hip. Finals week arrived with relentless intensity. Kira's apartment transformed into a fortress of textbooks, highlighters, and empty coffee cups. The portfolio remained unopened in her desk drawer, its presence a gravitational force disturbing her concentration whenever she passed it. Detective Walsh appeared on campus during her criminal evidence exam, leaning against the hallway wall as students filed out exhausted but relieved. "Interesting career choice for someone who works at a known gathering spot for certain business interests," he commented as she passed. "Most criminal justice students need jobs to pay tuition," Kira replied, clutching her backpack tighter, the keychain a reassuring weight in her pocket. "Unless you're offering police cadet positions that work around class schedules." The detective's laugh held no humor, his eyes never leaving her face as students streamed past. "Just curious about the shooting at your workplace that nobody seems willing to discuss," he pressed, voice casual despite the accusation beneath. "I serve food and drinks, detective," Kira responded, channeling the practiced calm she'd developed serving difficult customers. "Kitchen incidents are handled by management, not waitstaff with textbooks to study." Walsh's gaze sharpened like a predator sensing weakness. his next words measured carefully. Gregory Weiss doesn't dine with just anyone serving his table. 2 years of Thursdays creates patterns, and patterns interest me professionally. Ice spread through Kira's veins despite the summer heat, the detective's knowledge of Gregory's dining habits confirming her suspicions about police surveillance. Regular customers request regular servers, she shrugged, feigning indifference while calculating escape routes. His organization has expanded operations recently, new territories, new ventures, attracting attention from people less friendly than me, Walsh continued, offering information as bait. People associated with him tend to disappear or advance rapidly, rarely anything in between. The shadows beneath the campus oak trees stretched longer as afternoon waned, Kira's next exam looming while the detective seemed content to monopolize her limited preparation time. Is there an actual question in this conversation, detective, or just vague observations about my job? Just friendly advice. Career paths are set earlier than most people realize, Walsh answered, straightening from his casual pose against the wall. Choose carefully which path you're walking, Ms. Johnson, before you can't turn back. The detective's warning echoed in her mind through her final exam, competing with definitions of probable cause and chain of custody as she filled blue books with carefully formulated answers. The irony of excelling in law enforcement theory while harboring secrets wasn't lost on her. That evening, alone in her apartment, Kira finally opened the leather portfolio to find not cash, but documentation for a full academic scholarship. Legitimate letterhead, official university endorsement, nothing connecting it to Gregory Weiss or his organization. The Savannah summer stretched endlessly ahead as classes ended, Kira's reduced summer schedule at Il Gabbiano, leaving hours of unaccustomed free time. She spent mornings running along the riverfront, afternoons reading criminal psychology texts not assigned by professors. Thursday arrived again, the restaurant preparing for evening service, when Kira's manager called her into his office with unusual solemnity. Mr. Weiss has requested a private dinner tonight, he explained, avoiding direct eye contact. At his residence, not here, he asked specifically for you to serve. The invitation, phrased as employment rather than social engagement, carried clear implications beyond its surface meaning. Is declining an option? Kira asked, already knowing the answer, as her manager's expression shifted from uncomfortable to alarmed. The drive to Gregory's estate wound through Savannah's outskirts, grand oaks draped with Spanish moss creating tunnels of shadow and light. Kira sat rigid in the back seat of the black sedan, the driver's silence amplifying her racing thoughts as they passed through wrought iron gates. The house surprised her. Not the ostentatious mansion she'd expected, but an elegant historic property, understated and refined, set back from the river amid carefully tended gardens. Security cameras tracked their approach, disguised within architectural details that preserved the home's period character. Gregory waited on the veranda, casual in rolled shirt sleeves rather than his customary suit, the transformation from public figure to private man startling in its completeness. Thank you for accepting my invitation, he greeted, the formality at odds with the setting's intimacy. My manager suggested declining wasn't really an option, Kira responded honestly, following him into a foyer where crystal chandeliers cast warm light over antique furniture and contemporary security systems. Though I'm curious why you've brought your waitress to your home. A smile flickered across Gregory's face, genuine amusement replacing his usual calculated expressions. Because restaurants have ears, Ms. Johnson, and what I need to discuss requires privacy that even Il Gabbiano cannot provide. The dining room featured a table set for two, rather than the staff arrangement Kira had anticipated, the realization sending a jolt of uncertainty through her practiced composure. I'm not here to serve dinner, am I? She asked, watching his reaction carefully. You're here because Detective Walsh has been asking questions about you specifically, not just about Il Gabbiano or me, Gregory explained, motioning her toward a chair that his housekeeper pulled out. His interest suggests information leaks I cannot afford. Kira's stomach tightened as she sat, the implication clear. Suspicion had fallen on her despite her silence. I've told him nothing because there's nothing to tell, she insisted, fingers instinctively seeking the keychain in her pocket for reassurance. I know, Gregory replied simply, surprising her with his immediate confidence. If I believed otherwise, this dinner would be significantly less pleasant for both of us. Wine appeared in crystal glasses, poured by staff who materialized and disappeared with practiced efficiency. The scholarship has drawn his attention, Gregory continued, despite my considerable efforts to establish its legitimacy beyond questioning. I haven't accepted it yet, Kira reminded him. Though the financial security it offered tempted her daily, the burden of tuition and rent crushing her independence. Accepting feels like crossing a line I've been trained to defend. Gregory studied her across candlelight that softened the sharp edges of his features, making him seem momentarily less dangerous. Lines exist primarily in academic theory, Ms. Johnson. Reality operates in gradients of necessity and consequence. A chef appeared with the first course, the presentation worthy of Il Gabbiano's finest offerings, though Kira's appetite had vanished beneath the weight of conversation. Walsh believes you're recruiting me, she stated plainly, meeting Gregory's gaze directly. And what do you believe? He countered, the question hanging between them as he sampled the wine with practiced appreciation. That I'm offering education to a promising student, or inducting a new soldier into organized crime? Kira considered her answer carefully, aware that honesty might be dangerous yet necessary. I believe you're hedging bets, investing in potential while assessing whether I'm more valuable as ally or liability, she replied, surprising herself with her boldness. Lightning fractured the sky beyond the dining room windows, summer storms gathering over the river as their conversation continued through multiple courses. The Cardoso family has identified you, Gregory stated bluntly over dessert, the casual delivery belying the statement's gravity. Kira's fork froze midway to her mouth, appetite instantly evaporating as implications crystallized in her mind. Because of the warning I gave you? She asked, though she already knew the answer written in his suddenly hardened expression. Their surveillance captured you circling those words, passing me the bill. They see you as directly responsible for their hitman's failure and subsequent disappearance, Gregory confirmed, his tone matter-of-fact despite discussing what amounted to a death sentence. The silver keychain seemed to burn against Kira's thigh through her pocket, its purpose suddenly, terribly clear. The number inside, it's for when they come for me, she realized aloud, watching Gregory's expression for confirmation. My people cannot maintain constant surveillance without attracting unwanted attention from both the Cardosos and Detective Walsh, he explained, tension visible in the slight tightening of his jaw. The number connects directly to my security team, bypassing all other channels. Rain began lashing against the windows, mirroring the storm building within Kira's chest, as her college plans, her carefully constructed future, dissolved under the acid of new reality. I never asked for this protection, or the danger that necessitates it, she whispered, anger threading through fear. Choice became irrelevant the moment you decided to save my life, Gregory replied without apology, his gaze steady across the table. Now we both navigate consequences, you of compassion, me of debt. The word debt hung between them, weighted with implications beyond financial obligation. In his world, debts created bonds as binding as blood. What exactly do you expect from me in return for this protection? Kira asked, voicing the question that had haunted her since their first real conversation. Initially, nothing beyond discretion, Gregory answered, surprising her with his frankness. Eventually, your particular talents for observation, psychology, and quick thinking would be valuable in certain negotiations and assessments. Kira laughed without humor, the sound sharp against the backdrop of rainfall. You're offering me a job, after graduation, as what exactly? Mafia consultant? Criminal psychologist for organized crime? Gregory's expression remained neutral, though something like approval flickered in his eyes at her directness. I prefer strategic advisor for legal enterprises that occasionally operate in regulatory gray areas, he corrected, the euphemism almost comical in its inadequacy. The rainfall intensified, sheets of water obscuring the view beyond windows that Kira suddenly realized were likely bulletproof. And if I decline this career opportunity? She asked, already suspecting the limitations of her choices. You remain under my protection regardless. Debts must be paid in full, Gregory replied, his tone softening slightly as he added, though protection without cooperation becomes significantly more complicated for everyone involved. Lightning illuminated the dining room in stark white flashes, casting dramatic shadows across Gregory's features as he leaned forward. The scholarship remains yours regardless of your decision. Education should never be sacrificed to circumstance. A knock interrupted their conversation, one of Gregory's security team entering with deliberate calm that immediately signaled trouble. Sir, there's movement at the perimeter. 3 vehicles approaching from the south access road, he reported, professional despite the obvious threat. Cardoso's men, Gregory stated rather than asked, rising smoothly from his chair with practiced efficiency. Sooner than anticipated, though not entirely unexpected given recent developments. The transformation was immediate. The refined businessman replaced by something colder and more calculating, as Gregory pressed a button beneath the table edge. "Get Ms. Johnson to the panic room," he ordered the security guard, already moving toward what appeared to be a bookcase. "I'm not hiding while people die because of me," Kira protested, standing her ground despite the fear churning in her stomach. "This is my problem as much as yours now. You said it yourself." Gregory paused, assessing her with new interest, the calculation in his eyes shifting toward something like respect. "There's a difference between strategic advisory and combat, Ms. Johnson. One requires your talents, the other does not." The bookcase slid sideways to reveal a monitoring station, displaying security camera feeds from around the property. 3 black SUVs had stopped just beyond the gate, men in tactical gear deploying with military precision along the perimeter. "They're not here for a negotiation," Gregory observed calmly, removing a handgun from a hidden compartment and checking it with practiced efficiency. Cardoso finally decided to handle matters personally. That's him in the center vehicle. Kira's criminal psychology training kicked in as she studied the monitors, noticing patterns in the attackers' movements. "They're setting up a standard perimeter breach. Textbook approach for a target presumed to be in a fixed location," she analyzed aloud, surprising both Gregory and herself. His eyebrow raised slightly, reassessing her potential usefulness in the current crisis. 8 men, likely more in the vehicles, against my 5 on-site security. Challenging odds even with home advantage, he calculated, reaching for a secure phone. "You need a diversion, something to disrupt their pattern and force them to adapt to unexpected variables," Kira suggested, mind racing through scenarios from her tactical response coursework. "They're expecting resistance from security, not from within their own operation." Gregory's expression shifted from skepticism to interest as he gestured for her to continue, the respect in his eyes growing as she outlined a counterintuitive approach. "Walsh has been monitoring your property. Have security alert him anonymously about armed intruders. Involving police creates complications I typically avoid," Gregory replied, though his tone suggested consideration rather than dismissal. Though Cardoso's exposure to law enforcement would certainly disrupt his current standing with the commission. Rain continued battering the windows, as security feeds showed the intruders advancing toward the house, using landscaping features as cover. "We have approximately 3 minutes before breach," the security chief reported, awaiting final instructions. "Make the call," Gregory decided, his eyes never leaving Kira's as he gave the order. "And activate protocol exodus. We'll funnel them toward the east wing while extracting through the tunnel system." The next moments blurred into controlled chaos, security teams executing precise maneuvers, while Gregory guided Kira through hidden passages beneath the historic home. "The river access was built during Prohibition," he explained, as they moved through narrow brick corridors, illuminated by emergency lighting. They emerged into a boathouse where an unmarked vessel waited, engine already humming in readiness, just as police sirens began wailing in the distance. "Your suggestion may have saved lives tonight," Gregory acknowledged as they boarded, the security team securing the perimeter. The boat slipped into the storm-churned river as flashing lights appeared at the main house, Detective Walsh undoubtedly discovering an operation larger than anticipated. "What happens now?" Kira asked, rain soaking her clothes as they accelerated away from shore. Gregory studied her with new consideration, the dynamic between them fundamentally altered by her active participation in their escape. "Now we negotiate new terms. You've graduated from asset to ally tonight, which changes everything." The rain-soaked clothes clung to Kira's skin as reality crystallized around her. Criminal psychology had become more than academic pursuit. It had become survival strategy and unexpected career path. Her professor's warnings about ethical boundaries seemed quaint now, theoretical concerns washed away by practical necessity. Lightning illuminated the retreating storm clouds, nature's violence giving way to calm in perfect parallel to their night's journey. "The Cardoso family will regroup, reassess," Gregory explained, his tactical mind already mapping contingencies. "But Walsh's involvement complicates their approach. Criminal organizations fear law enforcement attention more than rival action." The marina staff maintained professional distance, their eyes carefully averted as Gregory and Kira disembarked, another indication of his influence extending beyond his immediate circle. No questions asked, no assistance offered without explicit request, no acknowledgement of unusual arrivals during pre-dawn hours. Savannah's historic skyline emerged from darkness as sunrise progressed, the city's beauty unchanged, despite the underground war being waged within its boundaries. Kira recognized the duality with sudden clarity, the visible world of tourists and commerce layered over invisible networks of power and obligation that truly dictated the city's functioning. Dawn broke over the Savannah River as they docked at a private marina miles downriver, the storm finally passing to reveal clear skies that promised summer heat. "Your education continues next semester as planned," Gregory stated as they disembarked, with additional practical instruction in strategic assessment and crisis management. Kira watched the sunrise color the water gold and crimson, her former life as just a waitress and student impossibly distant now. "I saved your life with 3 circled words," she said quietly, "and tonight you repaid that debt by saving mine." "Balance restored," Gregory agreed, the ghost of a smile touching his lips as he added, "Though I suspect our association has only just begun, Ms. Johnson. Some debts create bonds that transcend simple transaction. Thank you for following this intense journey of unexpected connections and dangerous choices. If you've enjoyed this story of a waitress whose quick thinking changed everything, write in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video to support more thrilling stories where ordinary people make extraordinary decisions. What would you have done in Kira's situation?